Because, what's the point of doing this research if it can't impact something?
So, welcome to the Marathon Mile.
Yeah. The closest I will come to a marathon. Probably.
Jennifer Honeycutt.
Yes.
A postdoc.
Yes.
For Northeastern University. Would you mind kind of explaining a little bit about yourself, where you come from?
Yeah, so I'm a behavioral neuroscientist. Specifically, right, I look at early life adversity, and so how early environment interacts with your genetics and with kind of what you're born with innately to change the trajectory of your brain development. So that's my big picture.
Two options. Option one, I have a topic. Or option two, you can choose a topic that you have in mind, but that comes at a price of the $26.20 for the miles in a marathon.
Okay, I'll pick, and I'll go on what I've been doing all morning.
Let's start the mile.
Okay. So currently, right, there's not a law, but there's a policy, right, that's been enforced at the border since April. And what that is entailing is that if you're coming over the border, and in some cases this is asylum seekers, and in some cases this is people who are illegally crossing the border, regardless, right, of their reasons, they're reaching the border and they're being separated from children if they have their children with them. But these are kids as young as infants, up through 17. And really, there's been this movement, especially within the psychology and neuroscience communities, where we're starting to really try and spread the word that there's a lot of science that says that this is damaging their brains. So there's a lot of research that's looked at kids that were institutionalized, so East Asian orphanages, Romanian orphanages. Depending on how long they were institutionalized, that changes outcomes. Generally, it makes your brain develop too quickly in areas that shouldn't be developed yet, and that usually take a long time to develop, like your prefrontal cortex.
Could you tell them what the prefrontal cortex is?
So the prefrontal cortex is this part of your brain. It is the last part of your brain to develop, usually around age 20 to 23, which is why we have all the laws with the age up around 21.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's the last part of your brain to develop, and what it's important for, in large part personality, but even more importantly, it's inhibition. So being able to say, hey, this is an inappropriate thing to do, I'm not going to do it right now.
Wow.
What's happening is, and at least what my research shows, right, in a rodent model of something very similar, is that these areas of the brain, like the amygdala, which is known for kind of emotion, anxiety, fear, right, this develops connections to the prefrontal cortex across development. So if you look across development and you trace all of the axons or the connections, you can see that they increase with age. What happens when you have chronic anxiety or chronic anxiety-inducing stress, right, over early development, and they're in a kind of a constant chronic state of stress, is that these connections arrive faster to the front of the brain, right? So now there's too many of them. The issue being is that the prefrontal cortex isn't developed enough to accept those and to kind of learn what to do with that input. Right? So now we have things getting there too early. The prefrontal cortex is trying to account for that, but it can't necessarily do it. It doesn't have the resources it needs yet. So that changes how your prefrontal cortex, this baseline, will function now.
It's like tossing a kindergartner into an accounting job.
Yeah, and be
on
like,
Wall
good
Street.
luck.
Yeah.
Just
maybe. All this stimulus.
It's too much stuff happening.
Handle.
Yep, and there's not enough kind of resources to deal with it.
Got it.
And that's going to just change the way that you react to things, emotionality, anxiety. So we see increased anxiety disorders, increased depression, increased risk for schizophrenia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's very interesting.
From that research, these circuits are kind of maturing too quickly. So their brain connectivity, when they look at them in an MRI during certain tasks, looks like an adult might.
Oh.
Right? So
interesting, but that's not good.
It's not good, right? And you would think it would be good, like, oh, early maturation, that sounds good.
Yeah.
But in fact, it's actually bad. Not to say that anybody who has that, right? To be clear, right? Not everybody who has that kind of experience is going to develop these things, but you're at a higher risk.
It's probabilistic.
Yeah.
There's a very increased probability that people wind up with this. So why do it?
Try and put them with at least one parent, or have kind of a holding with the family unit, as opposed to separating them out and putting the kids in a juvenile center versus the adults in an adult center.
And knowing that this is like, it's not, when people, I think about the mind, you know, like the thing that they're familiar with on their day-to-day, it's like it's not total magic. There's really, you know, a brain, and there's, you know, with research, there's things you can find out about how this organ works. And like, the reality of the matter is there's things like the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex.
Right.
And these are actual pieces of matter that matter, and we could, and it's not just like this magic mind concept.
We're zooming into a very small portion, right, of the big picture.
Yeah.
We want to understand the big picture, but to understand the big picture, we have to build it first.
And I think it's worth mentioning that the organization that I'm raising money for, the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation, is actually funding her research.
They are funding my research, yes.
Cool.
Which is why I think, and myself and my lab, were very kind of passionate about this issue, because this is something that, you know, we're doing and looking at this literature every day. And this is an opportunity for us to say, we see what's happening here, and we want to share that information in a way that's as accessible as possible, because, you know, what's the point of doing this research if it can't impact something?
So if you look at that,
woo!
We hit a mile.
Hooray! A whole mile.
How was it?
I exercised. Not bad. Thankfully, it wasn't as hot as yesterday.
Yes.
All right, so this is Nightingale.
Perfect. Now, before we end it, you know, as an honor, I always have my guests.
I'll do.
Perfect.
Today, so here's my answer for what I do for my own mental health. And that would be kind of to take the time for self-care. So realize, right, that we can only do so much. And if, you know, you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you just need a break, it's okay, right, to just kind of take some time for yourself. And what I do is I usually spend time with my family. Here's my dog, Tuck. He's not paying attention, but spending time with him and my wife, and also taking some time to do things that I enjoy, like art and things like that. So, yeah, that's my answer for what I do for myself.